Hey everyone. It's crazy how life throws these curveballs, right? Like these major events that make you stop and think about stuff you might not have considered before.
Totally. Things you might have put off thinking about.
Exactly. And for a lot of folks, I think the past few years with, the whole pandemic thing really brought life insurance to the forefront.
Absolutely. It's been a huge question mark for people. Like, what happens if?
Right, like how does all this impact my life insurance? We actually got a question about this from one of our listeners asking about an excerpt from Does life insurance cover COVID-19 or other pandemics? Which honestly is a pretty big concern for a lot of people right now. So let's dive into this and break it down. What's the deal with life insurance and pandemics?
Well, first off, like, the good news is that most standard life insurance policy, they don't actually have specific pandemic exclusions.
Okay, so that's a good starting point.
Yeah, so they do cover death from things like, COVID-19.
That's a huge relief for a lot of people, I'm sure. But, I was looking at the source material, and there's this whole thing about timing. It seems like it plays a pretty crucial role in all this. Can you kind of unpack that for us?
Yeah, for sure. The thing is, there's a difference between a pandemic exclusion, which is super rare, and then like pandemic-related changes to the underwriting process, which is way more common.
Underwriting, right. So that's all the stuff they look at when deciding whether to give you a policy and how much it'll cost.
Exactly. So most policies will cover death from a pandemic, like we said. But if you're applying for life insurance after you've already been diagnosed with something like COVID, things can get, well, more complicated.
So it's not like it'll be automatically rejected, but
Right. It's not a straight no, but there might be delays, or they'll look at your medical history a lot closer. And yeah, you might end up paying higher premiums.
I guess it kind of makes sense. It's like trying to buy flood insurance when your house is already underwater, right? The risk is just way higher at that point.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. And, that brings us to another really important point that the source material highlights being honest on those applications is super crucial.
Right, right. I mean, it seems obvious, but
It really is. I can't tell you how many times I've seen cases where, people let out a seemingly small detail, or maybe they weren't entirely accurate about something, and then later on it led to their claim being denied.
yeah, that's rough. But I'm curious, wouldn't it actually benefit insurance companies to encourage people to get life insurance even after a diagnosis? Like they could charge higher premiums, right?
Well, yeah, in theory, but the whole system of insurance is built on trust, right?
Oh, I see.
If people start being dishonest, it throws everything off balance. It doesn't matter if the cause of death is totally unrelated to what they misrepresented on their application. That breach of trust, that's a big deal. And it can be enough to get a claim denied. It's not about punishing people, it's about keeping the system fair for everyone.
That makes total sense. Now, I know we touched on this earlier, but the source also mentioned travel and how that can sometimes play a role in life insurance, especially during a pandemic. Have you seen that happen firsthand?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So while a pandemic itself can't cause an insurance company to like cancel your existing policy or change the terms, travel history can definitely be a factor when you're applying for a new policy.
Okay, interesting. So, for example, like if you've just come back from a trip to a place with a high rate of, I don't know, some new virus.
Exactly. Something like that. They might put your application on hold for a while or adjust the premiums just while they're figuring out the potential risk.
So it's not just about where you've traveled, but also the timing of your application in relation to those travels.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. And it's not always cut and dry. Underwriters, the people who make those decisions, they're looking at a bunch of different things like how long were you there? Why were you there? What's the overall health situation in that region? It's complicated stuff.
It definitely sounds nuanced. Now, I know we've been talking a lot about COVID specifically, but do all these same ideas apply to other pandemics as well?
Pretty much, the general principles are the same. Life insurance usually covers death from any cause unless they specifically say it doesn't. So, pandemics, they're generally treated like any other kind of illness. But it's important to remember that this is different from, say, an accidental death policy.
Right, because those usually wouldn't cover illness-related deaths, would they?
Exactly.
So bringing this all back to our listener, what's like the biggest takeaway? What should they really keep in mind?
I think the most important thing is the best time to get life insurance is when you're healthy. That way you'll get the best possible rates and you'll avoid all those potential complications and delays we talked about. Plus, even if you already have a life insurance policy, it's a good idea to look it over every now and then, especially after any major life changes, just to make sure it still fits your needs and your family's needs.
It sounds like having that peace of mind is really valuable, knowing that you've got things in place to protect your loved ones no matter what happens.
Absolutely. I know we've been focusing on all the details, the technical stuff, but we can't forget about the human side of all this. Life insurance, it's not just about policies and premiums. It's about giving your loved ones financial security and giving yourself peace of mind knowing they'll be taken care of.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And to our listener, remember, what we talked about today, it's based on just one source. It's always smart to do your own research, too. And if you need help, definitely talk to a financial advisor. They can help you find the best option for your situation. Until next time, stay curious.